Yeah. Oh, we are live, everybody. Good morning. If you are watching us live, and it is October 27th, and last Wednesday of the month, and Halloween week. So, if you kiddies out there have got your costumes, including the big kids, it's one of my favorite weeks of the year, by the way. Have always loved to play dress up. I've always loved cosplay. And it was a very sneaky way for me to dress up in girl costumes when I was still living as a boy. So,
hey, I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, most gender variant people probably before they came out, but they knew that they were gender queer.
Yeah.
Halloween is even after we come out, is still one of our favorite times of the year because it's a down low way of being a Disney princess
that's a good point.
And be able to be gender queer, gender fluid, and people go, do we need to talk?
Yeah.
And, especially if you're running in predominantly straight cis circles. So it is still one of my near and dear. And I don't know, I love the spooky parties and the costume parties and just the revelry and because I'm not religious, so a lot of the holidays after this are more religious oriented, which I don't care for. So this is my favorite holiday of the year.
Well, good.
It's been that way for time.
Yeah, Jenny, you said something that I don't think I ever really realized that, but you're right. I mean that was a holiday where it was very inclusive. It's a very inclusive holiday in many ways. And it's my favorite holiday too. So yeah, well, listen,
I think a lot of LGBT people in general just like it because it's fun, it's playful. Yeah. There's no religious connotation. You can just you just get to be a kid, no matter how old you are. And there's candy involved for people like chocolate. Little chocolate bars are like gold in your little sack. I
always got the terrible black and orange candy, that
the twists, the kisses kind of thing.
That's right.
I used the peanut butter ones, but not the black.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, it was one of my favorite. Especially because Star Wars was so big. So a lot of years I went as a Star Wars character.
Jenny, you're dating us to all of the people that are watching.
Oh no, because there's new Star Wars movies out.
So exactly. You're right. Okay, so let's start the show. Looks like Mama Ruth is on. And so Mama Ruth, are you able to say good morning?
Yes. Good evening, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm kind of lost. I've been lost. No. Sorry, y'all.
Well, as Mama Ruth said, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Pan Dulce. I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, Barbara Bacon, Mama Ruth, and Stephen DeFiore, who is not joining us tonight. I wish he would. We'd have everyone back tonight or today. So full disclosure, this show is being dropped on October 27th, which is our normal time on Wednesday, but we're actually recording it the night before. And so we are probably drinking something a little bit different than we normally would, but let's just, we'll have a great time. Once again, welcome everyone who's joining us on Facebook Live, but also those who join us on YouTube and Facebook later on. If you're watching this, you're probably watching it later on, as most people do. We are seeing about 20,000 viewers a month now, and our last show was almost getting up to 2,000, but that Small Business Association show is now up to 5,000. So that was a good show, and it keeps rising.
It really clicked, the mix of guests that we had on, because we had 3 experts. They were just, if you were thinking about starting a business or have a new small business, you should go back and watch that show if you haven't already, because they really gave some great insight on what the SBA, the chamber, and Manolo, of course, our sponsor,
it was great to
great
have him.
Insight to entrepreneurs, and you had 3 brilliant guys that just did a great job.
To see what he looked like.
Go back and watch it. It's
that's right.
I will.
It was a really good show.
Yeah. Okay. So as we always do in Coffee and Pan Dulce, let's salute to our neighbors, whatever you're drinking. Normally we'd be drinking coffee, but it is Taco Tuesday technically at my house. So I'm drinking margarita. And also we do want to thank Manolo's Bakery, our producing sponsor and supplier, Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue in Charlotte, North Carolina. Please visit your support your Black and brown small businesses during this global pandemic, or any small business. Buy local. Barbara, I wanted to show you this. I picked up the Pan Dulce today.
I was going to ask if you had the
yes,
pig. Yay!
I do. And listen, now they're putting these little raisins for the eyes. I don't know if you can see that raisin. There's the raisin right there. And so I was like, what's that raisin for? Then I realized it had it on all of them. So I thought that was really cute. So Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue,
They're expanding their pigs.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So today's topic is what's an advocate versus an activist? We want to kind of educate people on the difference between those, because I really didn't understand what the difference is. I think we use those terms kind of
Interchangeably.
exactly. And then but before we do that, let's talk about three current topics or current events that Barb Bacon started us on, I think this summer, and we've continued it, except that SBA show. We kept it out because we know we talk forever. So in 30 seconds or less, the three topics, if you want to comment on, is the Alec Baldwin situation, I believe, in New Mexico. Is that right? They were filming a movie in New Mexico, and there was a tragic accident with a prop gun that killed the director and is very seriously injured the cinematographer. Also, the Facebook papers, that was some papers that were leaked, I believe. I'm not really even too familiar with that, but I have been seeing it on the news. So the Facebook papers have been leaked. And then let's also talk about, because we're going to do a show in November called KS, the Supply Chain. And we want to talk about the supply chain that everyone's talking about. So the SBA director talked about that as well. So who wants to comment on those in 30 seconds or less? Who wants to start? Jenny, you usually start. So do you want to start? And then
I'll start.
Barbara and then Mama Ruth. Okay.
First of all, I guess the supply chain, whatever you have a worldwide pandemic, obviously it's going to affect the supply chain in so many different ways, from labor to logistics and so on and so forth. It's just reality that we're always going to have supply chain issues, just because that's how, a macroeconomic system just has a lot of moving parts. To Alec Baldwin, and I'm going to repeat something that Trevor Noah said, which was, why in the world, with all the CGI technology that we have, why are we still using real guns?
Yes, exactly.
Literally is the most egotistical, narcissistic practice a movie could ever have. I mean, Star Wars, we just were talking about that off camera or on camera a little bit.
Yeah.
They don't go out and make lightsabers and laser guns with CGI these days. And with the technology that we've had for a considerable amount of time, that's just gotten better and more realistic. You could make such a realistic gun. You could hold a wooden stick for all that matters, like we did when we were kids. Yeah. And they can CGI in whatever gun you want to have, know. And there is absolutely zero reason for this. And this is not the first film or TV show where they've had fatal accidents. Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, was killed on a set. There was another one in the 80s, a TV show called Cover Up, where a male model that played an international spy or whatever got killed on a set with a real gun. And so this is not a new thing, but every 5 to 10 to 15 years, we have another senseless, stupid, inane, ignorant accident. And so I don't know, I feel bad for Alec Baldwin, but he was also the executive producer. It wasn't the first mess up they'd had with guns. And at this point, Hollywood either needs to change or they need to sue the pants off some of these producers.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
And change their name to Example.
Facebook papers and some Facebook papers is left.
Real quick, Congress is obviously been calling into question the practices of Facebook and investigating some of the basically providing oversight on Facebook. There's been a lot of things leaked because of that. A lot of things leaked from the congressional record, and some other people that were former Facebook employees are also leaking. Doesn't look good for Mark Zuckerberg. I think he's about to get zucked, and not in a good way.
There's my violin, you guys.
You know,
Not happening.
what the Facebook papers are showing is that he knew
Sure.
about these problems and put profits over people and over democracy.
Money.
He gets what he gets.
Yep.
Don't throw a fed.
Okay. Excellent. Hey, Barb, you want to comment on any of those three?
I just hope in relation to the Alex Baldwin situation that I heard some clips of a few things that he has supposedly said. He's got a lot of power. I hope he gets rid of real guns.
Good point.
I just don't understand that.
Sure.
Facebook papers, Amy Klobuchar on CNN last night says she and actually some Republicans are working on a bill. I can't wait to hear more about that.
Excellent.
And what was the other thing? I forgot.
Supply chain.
Supply chain. Okay, all my geek friends, since I used to help manage IT, do not get rid of any of your old electronics and things, because those semiconductors and chips, they can't find them. They could be money, so don't
interesting.
get rid of that stuff. It's not going to get better, and this could last a couple of years if this doesn't get under control. That's all I have.
Excellent. Well, Mama Ruth, I don't know if you're able. Do you want to comment on any of those? Can you hear us?
I was sending y'all a message.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been lost for over a week already.
Oh.
I don't know if y'all know, but I almost lost my mom. She's been in ICU. Her kidneys.
Oh my goodness.
They've been paralyzed.
Yeah.
So today was her first day in dialysis. They had to transfer her from one hospital to another. So I'm lost. So I'm sorry. I won't be able to.
That's okay. I understand. We'll our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family is normal.
I'll put your mom on the prayer chain again, Mama Ruth.
Yes. Yeah. So
she almost died on Friday. She was all giving us the will and stuff, but hey, there's miracles happening. So don't believe anyone.
Thank God for dialysis.
Excellent. Well, I guess I have to follow that. So I will, on Alec Baldwin, I think it's a developing story. I agree with everything you guys have said. I mean, in 2021, unfortunately, this tragedy, hopefully something good will come from this tragedy, and they will make some changes in Hollywood, which will lead directly to, how hard it was for them to get rid of smoking on camera. And so maybe this will be something that they can learn from. The Facebook papers, I admittedly, I have not been in the know. I didn't know anything about it until you guys talked about it before the show. And I'm watching CNN right now. And the headline was Zuckerberg leaving, something about Zuckerberg is not leaving, but he's no longer considered the darling of Facebook anymore with his employees. And so that was interesting to see that. And I think what Barbara, you said about Amy Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar, the legislation, I think we'll probably see a lot of it. But I was also listening to the Young Turks, which I have never really watched them before. And they talked about this a month ago. And one of the Young Turks on one of their shows said, he doesn't blame. Facebook is going to do everything they can, even if it means promoting, whatever the algorithm is to get people hooked to their product, just like cigarette companies, they're going to do everything they can to make a profit. And so they need, we need to intervene somehow. That's what the Young Turk said. Well, and then the supply, go ahead, Jen.
One quick note, the difference between, say, nicotine, sodas, McDonald's French fries, which I'm addicted to.
I know.
You gotta try the new Wendy's fries.
Makes its users the product. So we're the product, and our clicks is what draws in the advertising money. So businesses pay for clicks. Whether it's a podcast like ours or whatever. But the actual viewers which is the opposite of most, speaking of supply chain, most of the time you buy either an intangible or tangible product, that's the product. But in our case, with all social media, it's not just Facebook, Twitter, with the actual users and the amount of traffic is the actual product, and they're selling to a business community.
Yeah. Hey, Jen, I'm going to ask you this question, but not right now, because then we'll go on forever. But I do have a question on that one. But as far as supply chain, we're going to have a show in November called Guess the Supply Chain. So maybe we can kind of understand how the supply chain works. I did appreciate the fact that our current president, President Biden, put his big boy pants on 2 weeks ago, held a news conference, or maybe it was last week, and he actually is trying to address the supply chain before the holidays. Yes, I think that's when he, and so he's actually, working with the LA port and the Long Beach port, I believe, is that right? To get them to run 24 hours to get products in. But one of the things he said I thought was very interesting was the supply chain has always been run by private businesses. And that is an old way of doing things. Maybe it's time that we intervene a little bit and government help them with that, because what they've shown is the private businesses can't handle things like when a pandemic hits, everything just breaks down. And so there's got to be something. So
and a lot of people have to realize too that many consumer products sold at an all-time high. That's why Amazon had record profits. Walmart had record profits. So many people that sell goods, especially electronics, because we entered into the era of Zoom, so a lot of people updated their electronics. And when they did that,
from home and they need computers and printers. And
people,
it went crazy.
especially if you have a 2 or 3 adult household, and now every one of you is operating from some part of a household. People bought like you and Andrew, for example. You both. So you have to be in
2 different internet services
and get new and possibly get new equipment, or updated cameras or ring lights or whatever. And so many products were needed. And then also too, we forget about how long the students, our learners, are, especially K through 12 and even college students, all started doing distance learning at once. So guess what? A lot of those families didn't necessarily have a dedicated system for the kiddo, but because they were needing their systems for work, the kiddo, that's something. Well, we'll get them real cheap, basic tablet or something to log in for school if the school district didn't provide it. And so you had a surge of consumer products.
Well, I think
it changed things quite a bit,
Well, I think also when the president, when he was giving his talk about the supply chain, he also just highlighted one of the challenges we have is so much is not made in America, and because of that, we have to ship it here. So we need to really refocus on buying American, building as much as we can here. Making American, doing these things here to help, and that's not something that's going to be fixed in a year. That's a generational project. But the fact that he actually brought it up, and I'll give our former President Trump one thing. Remember, he ran on made America first. The problem is he talked about he never did anything. And so so it was just all talk. It was like a salesman, At least this president is trying to do something. So I just have to throw that in there.
And it's very complicated, just like when we pivoted in the early 20th century with World War I and World War II and the pandemic then, is that so many things changed then too, as we switched from an agrarian economy to a manufacturing economy, and they had the same supply chain problems then
agrarian.
Not agrarian.
I don't even know what that word means.
Farming.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We went from being a nation of farmers and mostly living in rural
Why can't you talk simple talk, girl?
I thought I did. But and now we're switching to such a digital economy. And even more so because of social distancing. And so you're going to have these hiccups. This is not something that even if we manufacture it here, we still would have had issues keeping up.
That's a good point.
And the whole world felt this. And so And now our cars, even, you know, like Teslas, you know, they run off, you know, basically if they drive themselves, they got to have computer chips, you know. And so there's a lot of technology that's changing, and we most households have most people have more than one device per person, you know. I have two. And so
okay, Jen. Hey, Jen,
so
let's
that just gives you an idea.
No, let's switch to our topic. And before we switch to our topic, let me just give a plug real quickly. Next week, on our next week's show on November 3rd, our Wednesday show, Dr. Bumfeld will be back, and we will be talking about what's an anti-racist. Dr. Bumfeld has been talking about this on and off for a year. I don't know if y'all heard him on the show.
Yeah.
And we will be joined with Melba from Wedgwood Church, who was on our show a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago. Yes, and then also Dr. Reverend Rondi Sadler will be joining us as well. So we'll have 3 wonderful guests, and we'll be talking about a very important issue, what's an anti-racist, and I'm very interested to hear the topic on that show. So with that said, let's jump into our topic, what's an advocate versus an activist? Let's see, I Googled it, as I always do, the Google machine, you know, used to be Yahoo, now it's all Google. Remember Bing, I binged it,
Yes.
whatever you want to use. All right, so what do y'all think of the differences? Let's go around. We'll start with you, Jenny, Barbara, and tell us what you think the difference is, if you know.
I mean, I said for the longest that I was an activist, and I've had tons of people correct me and said, "No, Jenny, we think of you as more of an advocate." And from my understanding, because I did not Google it, is the advocate basically works towards helping a community, like, you know, I'm often referred to as an LGBT activist, so activists are advocate, and the advocacy is trying to typically progress a cross section of people, and an activist typically is thought of as more of a field operative, somebody that you know, like in the 80s, you know, you had a lot of HIV activists that would go to the White House and protest, or you know, Black Lives Matter would be more of an activist, where they're going to have a show of force or a show of solidarity, and they're chain themselves to a fence, or, you know, do something to get the movement noticed and get the subject matter noticed. And so I think one's more like somebody that's working inside the system to help progress a movement, and one is trying to call attention to a societal problem or a societal issue that they feel passionately about, and are kind of similar, because they're typically working for a point of view and a cross section of society.
All right. Barb, what do you think the difference is?
I
There's no right or wrong answer, by the way.
I agree with Jenny, but when I hear activist, I don't always think that's positive.
Okay.
I think over the past 18 months since the pandemic, activists, in my mind, have changed quite a bit, because it's not violent anymore, and activism sometimes can be violent, and I don't always agree with that. But and then you go back to like Jane Fonda, that she was an activist against the Vietnam War and things like that. I'm an advocate for many things, and I would never consider myself an activist. So
okay, all right,
I'm moving within the sphere of influence, and talking to people and doing things and trying to help. Activists help in a different way, as long as it's not violent.
Okay, all right. So I mean, and y'all's definitions are very much when I use the Google machine. There were differences. People were writing papers on the difference between an activist and an advocate, and they also included allies as well. Advocate, activist, and allies. They most of the papers had 3 different types. So this is kind of what they said in a nutshell. An advocate is a person who supports a policy, a recommendation, or a cause by talking about it.
Okay.
An activist is a person who supports a policy, an action by using vigorous campaigning to bring out political or social change. And an ally is a person who supports a policy and a condition, who supports a group of people who are trying to get change. So you have an advocate, an activist, and an ally.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the general definitions. And of course, but I kind of agree with you, Barbara. It seems like lately the word activist has gotten kind of a bad rap. I don't know. I think it's gotten a bad rap because to me, the activists are the ones who actually do the dirty work. They're the ones who actually are out there, you know, with the signs, you know, doing those kind of things. And an advocate is a person who kind of just talks about it. And then an ally says, yes, I support you. I'm going to go to your event, but I'm not actually going to march with you. I guess that would be the difference. But, but what do you think, Jen?
But I think typically, I guess why I get labeled an advocate is because, you know, because I have spoke in front of governmental bodies.
Sure.
Not in necessarily a protest, but more or less as, I guess, air quotes, an expert or learned on the subjects. And so that's why I probably get glossed more as an advocate rather than an activist, because even though I do, you know, go out and protest and I've been in marches and stuff like that, it's not really what I'm known for. And so, and I think those can bleed over. I think an advocate can very much go to a women's march and say that you're an advocate and you're a feminist and you work in feminist groups and you do testimony. But at the same time, I think you can also be an activist and either be a, you know, maybe a, you know, protecting people at Planned Parenthood as an escort, or go out to the Women's March or a BLM march or something like that. And I think the alt-right is, number one, exaggerated the violence levels in certain protests. And for their own gains. And I think also too, a lot of times, if you see one group of people really complaining about activists, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, because they typically are from the opposite camp. So they're normally the pushback, because they are because maybe that activist is calling out some bad practices that the other side supports.
Because you could. Because I can imagine, you know, we talked about this right before about changing technology and social media. You can be a social media activist, you know, like on Twitter or TikTok or whatever, and you can try to call out things by, I don't know. I think, but I'm interested to hear what Barbara, because what Barbara said, I think most people who are advocates, like I consider myself an advocate.
Me too.
I've never really considered myself an activist because I'm not willing to get arrested or get really my hands dirty.
Exactly.
You know, but now that I think about it, it's almost as if though even I have started to think activist is somehow lower than an advocate. Does that make sense?
I think
I mean, being an activist, you activate for good or for bad. You activate people, anger. You motivate to do things the opposite. Where being an advocate, you actually play a role of asking for justice and equality among your neighbors. You know, being an activist, remember, I see it almost into being communist. I mean, you see these foreign countries, you see all these people doing activism, trying to change their, I guess, their rulers or their mandates and the way their government works, but they're not actually advocating and requesting their rights in the right way.
But I also think too that if you're going to talk about just the the quote unquote evils of activism,
sure,
and leave out the peaceful protesters or the pacifist slash activists like a Gandhi, a Dr.
sure.
King,
Right.
people that both stirred emotion by their words, got arrested many times, but at the same time also were about peace. They wanted to bring about change by peaceful means rather than deal. And there's a lot of activists in the BLM deal.
Sure.
91% of the BLM protests last year had zero violence, according to the FBI.
Sure.
So only 9% resulted in either a thrown rock through a window or a physical altercation, maybe with an alt-right activist as well. There's a lot of or maybe heavy-handed police tactics that weren't necessarily done by the activists, like we saw in Charlotte, where they cornered and used military-style tactics and then used gas weapons against peaceful protesters. That was classified as a violent clash, but the only people that brought the violence were the actual police, the law enforcement, for no reason. So,
hey, Jenny, you said something that was incredibly important, and I never really thought about it from that point of view. What you said was 91% of Black Lives Matter marches and protests in the last year are basically been peaceful. So let's say about 9% have not been. But the Republican Party and the alt-right and the GOP QAnon Party, they say, why are we investigating the January 6th activism when we should also be investigating the Black Lives Matter riots? And I think the answer can be very safely, because out of all of the Black Lives Matter protests and marches, 91% of them were safe. Out of the one alt-right march, 100% of them were violent. So when we have to compare which one we're going to look at.
So here's the difference.
Yeah.
So there is a huge difference between the alt-rights marches at, say, the Michigan State Capitol, where there was no violence, but there was the threat of violence, but there was actually no violence on their part. There was many marches, including here in North Carolina. There was many marches against the mask mandates that were not violent from the alt-right.
Right.
Sure.
The difference was what happened on January 6th was a terrorist attack.
Oh, yeah.
That was intended, that was targeted to stop democracy. And so when they targeted public officials, including Republicans, and set up a gallows and had zip ties and actually intended to kill and break things, that was a militant terrorist attack. That was not activism. That was not intended to have a peaceful end or a beginning. That they stormed a locked Capitol, they attacked police from the beginning. That was not intended to be a kumbaya moment. Let's not gloss a peaceful protest, whether it's from an alt-right group or a progressive group. Let's call it what it was. That particular situation was a terrorist attack.
So do you think, and the question to all of y'all here tonight, and thank you, Mama Ruth, for jumping in. That was exactly. Like for me, now that I'm listening to this kind of explanation and so forth, I think I kind of go in and out as an advocate. I'm an activist because I've marched with the Black Lives Matter individuals and the women's individuals and immigrant rights individuals. But then I'm an ally because I support other things, but I just want to be there for them, but I'm not, I've got other things on my plate.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, an ally, the way I see it, though, is an ally also, too, can be supportive, but it isn't necessarily part of the group.
Sure.
So, for example, if I go to a march that's for a LatinX cause, like immigration and making people documented, I'm not LatinX.
Sure.
But I'm an ally.
Right.
I would be happy to protest with them, which I have. And then I'm also an advocate because I've said many times during this pandemic, if we have a labor shortage, truly do, we have 11 million people that are all they need to go to work is give them the documentation. Boom, we got 11 million more employees. Bam, problem solved. And so,
and they wouldn't be afraid to go to work.
Yeah. So
we need truck drivers right now.
And just the same way with Black Lives Matter. You know, you and I both marched in several marches last year.
We did.
And neither one of us are Black, but we're an ally. We stand with our siblings of color in solidarity. And we also, I think all three have an interwoven deal where they have enough similarities and layers. And I think anytime that you do activism and advocacy and you're an ally with many groups, they're always going to kind of stack. You could technically be all three, but more for one.
No, I agree. And I have always really respected people who call themselves activists, especially since I've lived in Charlotte, because I know they're the ones who actually have to do what, I don't want to say the word dirty work, but they're the ones who actually have to get their hands dirty. And they're the ones who actually are the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are actually marching, doing things that you almost have to do to get something changed. Because advocates, we can talk about things.
Risk. I mean,
they're
at risk for a lot of different things. They could get beat up. They could get
arrested.
Get shot, get arrested.
Yeah, I mean, a frontline.
They're high risk, but then there's other kind of activism going back to like the 60s and the 70s. That was violence, and people that meant well got sucked into violence. And but activism from my age group was never a good thing. But now it is, because it's looked at different, because people realize if you don't get involved, nothing's going to change.
But do you think, Barbara? I've got a question, because you know, you're not the same age as my parents, but you're in the baby boomer generation, so you probably remember maybe the Vietnam protests and that sort of thing. Yeah, and so depending on which side of the issue you're on, more conservative families obviously usually sided with the federal government and supported the Vietnam War, and then there was more progressive families that if they weren't out there protesting, they supported the protesters in solidarity. And so I think it really depends on the view of who you grew up around. I think you grew up in a fairly conservative family, and I did too. My dad's a Vietnam veteran, so obviously he did not support the protesters because they were actually protesting him. And so when I was a kid, my parents did not speak well of the activists that protested the war. And do you think both of our lenses got skewed a little bit about activism because of our upbringing or who we grew up with?
That's a good point.
Well, I can tell you that I lost 15 of my classmates that went to Vietnam. They died. But I also lost classmates hitchhiking to Canada. One of them got hit by a car. A couple of them got involved in drugs and things like that. My class was like at the beginning of like drugs in high school. I'm like, drugs, I'm a holy roller Catholic kid. We don't do drugs. But and
holy roller Catholic, I'm gonna
never
call her
even
that.
thought about it, but some of my other friends that didn't go, that went to Catholic high school, we couldn't afford it. We had too many kids, but they were like, drugs? What are you talking about, drugs? I'm like, you got to be kidding me, I was like, but I never did that.
But
the activism part of it, there was activism when I was a senior in high school, and it shocked me. How dare you be that outspoken, so I think back to that, And now I think about the way things are, and it's like, it's really changed. But there's a boy that I've known him since I was 5. He stayed in Canada forever. He was afraid to come back. And when he
because of the war,
his mom died. And I said, nobody's going to come and get you anymore. They're just not doing that, but
yeah,
it's so different now. But activism was not a good thing.
Sure.
And now,
now
it's not bad as long as you're not violent.
But I do
because
believe
it's like demanding. It's like, demanding things, not really being the voice of your neighbor.
Yeah.
But hey, Mama Ruth, I have a question, and Jenny, jump in. But that's interesting. That's interesting what you said, Mama Ruth, because as I look at, let's say, things that have changed, people who are being marginalized and people who are being hurt, especially in other countries, for an example. Some of them, when they have to turn to activism, because that is how they are able to make that change. And so, I mean, for an example,
you gotta understand, Christian, that anger calls out anger.
Sure.
Okay. And things go escalated. When people are upset, they're gonna do with a lot of anger, and they kind of dispraise, or they kind of change the name of angry to activism instead of being a voice.
Sure.
We gotta learn how to be on the table and talk about our rights and be an advocate.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. No, I understand what you're saying, but then you'll have activists, or you'll have, especially, and I'm not talking about like on the left side, on the right side, like the QAnon people and the gun rights people who are activists. They tell us, and what they say is, our founding fathers were activists. They rebelled against England. They rebelled against.
So they're following. They're continuing. An establishment, a legacy, a background. That's like me coming from a poor family, like everybody else talk about it. You end up doing the same thing as your parents, because you're afraid to become wealthy, because that's not in our protocol. We were born poor, and that's where we belong.
So Jenny, jump in. I mean, I know you wanted to say something.
I guess when you talk about activism and it gets glossed through the lens of violence versus a nonviolent protest / activism, I think what Barbara and Mama Ruth are saying is that activism, when it's a peaceful protest or a peaceful march or whatever, is not necessarily a bad thing. And I agree with that. I also don't like violence of any kind. I don't think it helps a cause. No matter what you're talking about. I think it puts any movement in jeopardy. I think you lose the message, which is why I think many of the most successful people, like even in South Africa with apartheid, and you had Nelson Mandela, which was an activist from prison for so long because the South African government jailed him, and then you had Desmond Tutu that won the Nobel Peace Prize for his activism, and using predominantly the worldwide media way before the internet, and using a voice and marching peacefully and being very brilliant about his words and his understanding of history, broke the initial shackles of apartheid, and so much so that Nelson Mandela got freed and eventually became the president of South Africa. And you've seen this in so many movements. And then we also got to think about the Berlin protesters that tore down the wall between East and West Berlin, that many conservatives in this country approved of, because their hot button was communism and all that. And so there's been many times where conservatives and progressives have both viewed activism and protesting as a good and a bad thing. And I think it really is it something that they approve of?
Sure.
And is it lens like our families, during the Vietnam War, was it something that we approved of? We were on the side of the ledger that it fits in line with the silos that we believe in? Or is it in the silos that we don't believe in? And we go, those stupid activists. But then, so it comes down to personal beliefs and opinion on what specific activism is okay and palatable and what is not palatable, and so I find it fascinating when especially the alt-rights, those BLM communists and socialists, they're out there protesting and tearing up America, in the same breath applauding people that try to end democracy as we know it, and commit a terrorist attack.
Well, I think
that was not much different than what happened on 9/11.
Well, hey Jenny,
even worse.
Jenny, I hope, I don't know, maybe we can all decide this. I think we can all agree that we are in incredibly unusual times. Under normal circumstances, when a July 6th insurrection, January 6th, when that terrorist attack happened, under normal circumstances, regardless of what party you belong to, we would have all been outraged. That's normally. But we're in such a very unique situation that we actually have people that are more concerned about the Black Lives Matter marches than they are about that. And that is not a normal, we're not in a normal circumstance, which is why I think this conversation about advocates and activists is very important, because people will start to use these terms, because everything seems to be political now, to try to hurt someone. So give you an example. When I was running, I don't know if you all remember when I lost the election in 2016, and then when I was running again in 2018, one of the guys who ran for Congress in the 8th district here in North Carolina, I forget his name. He runs this newspaper called, or this online newspaper called NC Politics or something like that. I forget his name. So him and I knew each other because of the way we were running. We both ran together in 2016. When papers announced all of the ballot PDF, everything announced, they identified me as a business person, a former hospitality person. That was how they listed me. All of 2016, that's how I was listed. That's just, they make that up. You don't tell them how you want to be listed. That's how they list you. Okay. 2018, this person started to work for Dan McCready, or wanted to work for Dan McCready. Once Dan McCready started announcing and started running, he started calling me on their political page, and he was a Democrat and he knew me, a gay activist. And every time he would write about me, he would say, and Christian Cano, the gay activist, is running against Dan McCready, the businessman or the entrepreneur, they would call him. They did that to almost like to demean me, as if though, suddenly I'm gay. Exactly.
An unhinged angle, because the more moderate people in a
the gay activist,
a very straight, very conservative state, even the moderates are fairly conservative here. And so if you gloss somebody as 2 years before, call them a business person in the hospitality business, and then the next time you conveniently call them a gay activist, even if they're out of the closet. When you repeat that enough times, it creates a different narrative and how people are going to view you. And that's kind of what I was talking about, which is how we view something by specific words, as a specific lens, because I think of somebody as a gay activist like a Harvey Milk. I don't view you, Christian, as a gay activist.
No.
Because I don't think you've ever like chained yourself to City Hall or anything that I know of.
No.
I don't think that was that kind of party, but I also think too, we're not in unusual times.
Sure.
I do take exception because I think a lot of people don't understand American history. And real quick, one of the things, and this came in early days. This is when General Washington became President Washington, and there was a huge amount of anti-American government protests because our government did not pay any of the soldiers that fought in the revolution and the rebellion. They skipped all the veterans. A lot of people don't know that. There was a lot of pushback amongst the brand new American citizens that were the former colonists, the poor people that got drafted and conscripted into the military. And George Washington, there was a huge Second Amendment advocate. And one of the reasons they wanted to put it in is because you can create a militia with the snap of the fingers of a government. And so he used the Second Amendment and weaponized it against poor people that were protesting. And so, yeah, we've had these type of threats to democracy. And of course, we all know about the Civil War and so many other things, but we have a history of these very trying times and defining what democracy really is, what is frustrating, what is a tipping point. And we're constantly going to have to defend and redefine democracy, because quite frankly, up until recently, maybe in the last 50 years, have we really been a democracy? And I think we're learning how to become a people. And we're always going to have these things. It doesn't absolve the January 6th terrorists by any means, but it's happened in our country before, and it's going to probably happen again, most likely. It's just reality.
So go ahead, Barbara. I'm sorry.
I just want to say that when you said advocate, activist, and ally, you know whose name came to mind? John Lewis. We need him now. He did all three. He was quiet. He was a meld of those three things, and he did such a good job.
Yep.
And
I agree on that.
He was a sweet, smart, simple man, and I wish he was still here, because I read yesterday and it really concerned me that the young Black voters are very disenchanted with Biden. And I don't know the roots of it. I just heard it and it kind of made me snap my head and go, oh. And I thought of him again. So I think he played all of those roles very well.
Well, I disagree.
And not only him, Barbara, I mean, we've had many others that, show the real character of a real activist or a advocate. I mean, just think about not only John Lewis, but Martin Luther King. We've had Cesar Chavez. We've had, I mean, Dolores still an activist. She's considered an activist. And she doesn't have to make no massive disorder.
Dolores Huerta considers himself an activist.
Yes, and she doesn't do no disorder, or she doesn't do no riots. She doesn't provoke anger. She doesn't do things to harm the country. She advocates in activism. She activates others, leaders, to come out of and speak out and demand our rights.
But I'm gonna counter what Mama Ruth and Barbara said. For one, we whitewash Dr. King and John Lewis a lot. and I think white people in general tend to play down the aggressive sides because we want to remember them as, kinder older men towards the end of their lives, especially with John Lewis. But John Lewis got the crap kicked out of him and fought back and protested and got arrested. He spent a lot of time in jail too.
I didn't say it was fun. But
Yeah. And what I mean by that.
Oh yeah, Martin Luther King did too. I mean, Cesar Chavez also.
Yeah.
By even today's standards, many of the things that Dr. King, specifically, and I'm including myself, many of us white people, when we quote Dr. King, we tend to quote the kinder, gentler quotes. We tend not to quote the more aggressive quotes because we want to sanitize a lot of his verbiage of that time, which I understand that everybody wants to.
Words are one thing, actions are another. I
he did both.
think we can say that he was as violent as some people.
Yeah.
Well, I think he was actually in some cases. I don't know if necessarily violent is the proper word, but I think Dr. King is definitely was more aggressive, and John Lewis was more aggressive than a Stacey Abrams.
Yeah. Well,
and
that's
would you
I'm
not
agree on
you
that.
could argue, but could you not argue that Stacey Abrams is the Dr. King and the John Lewis of the Black movement?
Yeah,
you gotta understand also there was a lot of discrimination, racism at that time as well.
Yes,
he was demanding his rights. I mean, but it was worse. I mean, I know it's bad right now, but before it was, like a Rosa Remember Parks.
Yes.
We got to think about all that.
Well, I think what I'm hearing from everyone, because we do need to start to wrap up, since we do value everyone's time and we value y'all's time as well. I think what I'm hearing from everyone is, advocates, activists, and allies. We all kind of need each other to get things done.
Yep.
I think what I'm hearing is this group would probably rather see more advocates and maybe less activists, because activists seem to sometimes not be able to control them. I don't know. Is that what I'm hearing, I like the activists.
I would like to see more I would like to see more advocates binding with allies, building those bridges to make that change instead of activism.
Yeah.
Okay. And Barb, what do you think? We'll end with you, Jen.
Activism, but I think it gets out of control, and I just don't condone violence. I think
that, and Jen,
as somebody that doesn't own guns and I have a massive issue with war in general, because I think, quite frankly, we've abused that way too much as a people. But I do believe that much of the quote unquote violence that comes in some of the protests is coming from the state rather than the people that are marching. And I bet if we really had proper video documentation of the 9% of the protests last year for the BLM, we would probably see that most of the violence came from police and National Guard and stuff like that, and very little of it started with the actual activists. But I can tell you what, in any of the 3 marches that I did with BLM last year, if the popo put their hands on me, better call the SWAT. Once you cease to become a police officer if I'm peacefully protesting and exercising my First Amendment, and you put hands on me, the badge is gone, in my opinion. I'm cracking some heads.
You gotta make sure that, I mean, I'm not against activism either.
Sure.
Kristen and I have participated in marches and activism in peaceful way. I mean, I've gone to the government center and done an activism speech and stuff, but in a peaceful matter. We don't want to be provoking either violence or kind of irrigating also our police officers, you know, because sometimes, you know, we had groups before, and I'm not going to mention them, but they will try to kind of go and you know, shake the little gravel out there to call attention and get arrested. That's not right, you know.
Well, both ways though. I mean, we had unarmed protesters right here in Charlotte that the police department made a decision to box them in into a parking garage, put on gas masks themselves, and use chemical weapons, military style chemical weapons on civilians. And these people, that particular group, did nothing. In fact, they even caught several police officers giggling and laughing about it right before they did.
Yeah, I remember that one.
To what we're about to do. So I see the majority of the BLM protests that did turn violent. The majority of the time, and this is according to the FBI as well, the majority of the time it was provoked by some sort of governmental agent. That it was very few where the protesters themselves threw the first rock, because one, they were all unarmed, you know, and we saw this in Portland, we saw this in Chicago, we saw this in many places. I think many times, I think we saw this in Kent State and Vietnam, where you had unarmed students get shot by a National Guard. And these students were unarmed and just protesting, college kids. And the Kent State military, the local militia or whatever they were, the National Guard, opened fire on unarmed civilians.
Well, I think when history looks back at 2020, especially because that's really kind of when the Black Lives Matter marches and stuff, summer of 2020 was at the height of it. I think when history looks back at it, I think they will remember a lot of because as Jenny said, I was in many of those marches. I saw many of those marches. They were all very peaceful. They were diverse people. They were all from all walks of life marching. And I think that when we look back at it, it will be considered a very peaceful event. I don't think the January 6th event will ever be considered a peaceful event. And so I do think that it is.
Well, I don't think they were comparable.
I agree.
I disagree.
And I do agree.
I think if you're going to compare something, I think the mass protests and the some of the things that the alt-right protested were also peaceful last year. I think you could compare those. I think you take January 6th and don't even mention it in the same breath as BLM, because I think
you can mix that.
I think that January 6th is a terrorist event.
I agree, Jenny, and I hope that most Americans, and I hope that people who watch this show will do that. But the reality is, there are individuals, Congress people, Madison Cawthorn, there is our own here, Dan Bishop, there is Marjorie Taylor Greene, all of those crazy, Lou, what's his name, the guy from Texas that we make fun of, Lou Gomer. They're all saying, they're outraged that we're doing this, that Congress is doing what they're doing, because we're not.
We might find out what they did, right?
Oh yeah, that leaked yesterday, 2 days ago. That's right. Okay.
But you know what? At the end, bottom line is that yes, Christian, all three are walking together, because there are used as titles for each occasion.
Sure.
If I'm gonna go and lobby to the lobbies and I become an advocate. But if I'm gonna go and protest my rights, I become an activist.
Sure.
If I wanna make that change, I become an ally.
Right.
So let's keep in mind.
Excellent.
But let's try to keep it in a peaceful and knowing, acknowledging what we're doing and the consequences when our actions they take place.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. Very, very well said. And Jenny, real quickly in 30 seconds, then we got to close up.
Well, I think all struggles for freedom are intersectional. Just as Angela Davis wrote in Freedom is a Constant Struggle, that we can compare Ferguson to apartheid, to the PLL movement, and they all have a lot of similarities where you have oppressive states that use aggressive military styles tactics against people of color. And we have to remember that is when a very oppressive regime like the United States with a fascist president is calling private citizens out to use the First Amendment, you're going to put a lot of tension. You're going to put a lot of pressure on local and state governments to clack that down.
Sure.
And I do believe that the presidency was misused, so much so that I think Eddie and Macon of us agreed.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think we'll all end up in history will show. I don't know how we survived, and we'll be able to look back and go, you remember when Trump was president? How the hell did we get through those years?
Pretty rough game show.
That's
40
right.
years of a reality show.
So before go ahead, Latino leaders speak. Is that a book from? Oh, are you reading that book, or is that something you're teaching? Or excellent. Yeah. So hey, I found the person who runs. It's called Politics North Carolina. It's an online newsletter that you can get, and they talk about politics all the time. The person's name is Thomas Mills. He ran for Congress in 2016, like I did, for District 8, I believe, and he's the one that started calling me a gay activist. And I like y'all, when I read that for the very first time, I was like, I didn't know. I mean, I actually kind of took it kind of like a laughing moment. I was like, well, I didn't realize. And then people still call me a homophobe. And so
I've been told you're not really gay before. I mean,
exactly.
At Pride, I had somebody come up to me. I won't name their name or their gender.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Next time you see him asking if he wants your autograph,
hold me to the side. I swear to God, at Gay Pride in 2019, it goes, well, your show partner, he's not really gay, and I'm like, well, I do believe.
Thank you for that.
Christian's partner, Andrew, believes that they are gay.
I do believe they've been married for about 25 years already.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, it's been all right. Well, with that, that was super funny. That's right. That was funny.
In fact, I think I texted you or called you right after that happened. I said,
"That's right." Believe it?
I remember. You're not gay anymore, Christian.
That's what I heard today, Christian.
Yeah. So, anywho, all right. With that, on that note, let's end the show. Okay. So let's go around the Brady Bunch screen. Tell us where you're going to be in 30 seconds or less. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And who wants to start? Since we're not live, technically, let's do it on the Zoom screen. Jenny, Barbara, and Mama Ruth.
Okay.
I'm going to be working a lot, and also I'm partaking a little bit of Halloween revelry. I've been invited to a live production of Rocky Horror through a theater group.
Rocky Horror Picture Show. Oh.
Yes, so it's going to be ridiculous. It's sponsored by the Queer Society and one of the theaters here. So it's going to be outdoors.
Awesome.
Well, I still have my one family that I'm working with. I've got helped the other two people. I'm done. My neighbor's going to be 82 on Halloween. So we're having a party for her, and poor Art is still recovering from the Chicago Marathon. His ankle is not better. So,
oh no.
Yep. So that's one.
Barb, I was flying to Chicago this weekend, but I had to cancel my weekend gateway.
Oh. It's going to be cold there. You don't want to go there.
It is cold. It is cold. All of my friends are down there. A lot of them, there were 10 couples that were going. I was just going to take the weekend to go, but due to my mom's critical conditions, I'm not able to fly right now.
Right. Praying for your mom, and I will get her on the prayer list.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last time.
Okay, Mom, where are you going to be? Your turn.
I am Well, hopefully I get better news tomorrow. And we have bought tickets for Mexico game. It's playing tomorrow here at the Panther Stadium. Our team it's playing against Ecuador. So Bank of America will be packed with all our Latinos. So I'm planning to join the game tomorrow with my family.
Excellent. All right, excellent. Well, I will be camping. This will be my first Halloween that I will not be passing candy out at the door. I'm so sad. And I was actually going to ask Jenny to come over.
Why did you do that? I can't believe that. That's not Christian.
Yeah, I know. Halloween is my favorite holiday, and I love passing candy out to the kids, and it's just so exciting. So, but I will have to miss it. I will be in the mountains with adults having adult Halloween. So that's it. Also, I just want to do a little shout out to Manolo's Bakery. They have these stickers, these bumper stickers that you could put on your car. They're $2. The donation goes to, I forget who it goes to. But anywho, I bought 2 of them. I'll put one on 2 of our cars. And I thought that was, I've got their shirt.
I'll get me one of those.
Yeah, it's he's got a lot of things going on. So listen, I just want to remind you once again, next week, very important show. The show topic is what's an anti-racist? Dr. Bumfeld will be helping us lead that show, along with Reverend Rodney Sadler will be on the show. Also, Melba Evans will be on the show as well. And we hope to have all of you, Mama Ruth and Barb, and hopefully we'll get Stephen back on and we'll have a full house. So, please join us next week when we talk about that. And then, of course, in November, we have some other shows happening. On November the 10th show, How Latinx Veterans Have Kept America Great. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Latino community has been in every war. We're the only minority community that have fought in every American war since our country has founded. And so that is one little fact there. And then on November 17th,
you know what? It would be nice for you to pull out the numbers, the percentage of all our Latinos that are enrolled in the armies and all the reserves. The numbers are outrageous.
You're right. They're very, very high percentages. On November the 17th, part 2 is PBS tax-funded all-white media. I'm invited those individuals again. We'll see if they show up. And we'll talk about.
Did they ever respond?
They have not yet, but we want to invite them because
but they did include something because they must be watching us or something.
Well, I know they are, but I do. I mean, if you have a chance, just watch 4 hours of daytime PBS. There's 4 stations. There's 4 stations. Not in the night. In the nighttime, it's very diverse because all the stories are about us, but they're not made by us. They're about us. But just watch during the day.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was. That's where that's where these people make their money. So okay.
Say that right.
Oh, that's right. Well, hey, I want people to.
Past my bedtime, I can say whatever I want.
That's right. That's right. And then the last show of the month in November 24th is Guess the Supply Chain. We will explain what the supply chain is and why is that important for the holidays. You could be like me and don't buy anyone presents for Christmas. I just say Merry Christmas. We do in our family. We do pick names
everywhere.
Yeah, we do pick names for Christmas in my family. So, but we don't pass.
We only pick names and that's it. Just an exchange.
Yeah, exactly. And, get someone a bottle of wine.
For the little kids, and then we have grab it. But I'm not going to be there. I'm not flying.
And then to my kids, I'll buy boxers and a pair of socks.
Hey, you joke, Mama Ruth. You don't know how valuable it is for. When I was younger, that was the most important Christmas presents I ever got were underwear, socks, and undershirts.
Yeah.
And I was like.
Because they're always losing them.
Exactly. I'm sorry, Jenny. You want to say something before we close out here?
I'm not touching that way. I don't want to know where people's kids are losing their underwear.
Hopefully, if we're COVID free, we should have our little Christmas gathering and do our little exchange.
No, we do Festivus.
We have to have Festivus in December. Festivus for the rest of us. Maybe Jeff Scott will be back. Yeah,
I got a list of grievances. I got a list of grievances.
That's right. That'd
stand
be our
you.
third annual Festivus show. So yeah, we'll
Yes.
have Festivus. That's great. I completely
yes.
forgot about that. All right. Well, with that said, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week on Coffee and Pan Dulce. We'll wave and stay on Zoom so we can do the promo. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.